Bogi. I'm a master mechanic and the owner of 180 Degrees Automotive, and you might know me as one of the hosts of the TV show All Girls Garage. I'm hanging out today at the SKF shop, and we're going to be working on this 2005 Dodge Ram 1500. It's got a bad hub bearing in the front, and so we're going to be replacing it with an SKF Hybrid X-Tracker hub bearing. So let's get started. All right, obviously our first step is to get the wheel off and get things turned around so that you can get at them. We're going to want to take our caliper and caliper bracket out of the way, and it's a good idea to have a bungee cord handy so that you can hang it up and out of the way while you're working. And you want to make sure when you're hanging this you have enough slack in the brake hose that you don't cause any damage. Should be good. Next, we want to just get our rotor out of the way. Now that we've got the caliper and the rotor out of the way, you can see that this is actually a relatively easy hub bearing to remove. There's actually only 3 18mm bolts from the back side that we're going to need to remove, and we don't even need to deal with an ABS sensor because this is rear ABS only. If you use a impact universal socket like this, you can get at all 3 of them relatively easily. Okay, I've got the 3 bolts out from the back, and now we're ready to remove the hub bearing. Now, there's a number of different ways that you can go about doing this. Normally, a slide hammer is adequate if you have the right adapter for it, but sometimes there's a lot of rust and it's seized in there and doesn't want to come out. In those scenarios, you might need to use an air hammer. Now, the idea with this is you're going to hit it at the side of the flange over here, and then come at it from the other direction, try to rock it back and forth, and hopefully it'll break free and walk its way out. So, let's cross our fingers here. Sometimes you wind up having to use more than one method. The air hammer got it a little bit loose, but it was fighting us the whole way, so we're going to try a different approach and use the slide hammer. See if we have any more luck with that. A little something like that. And that, my friends, is why I choose to live and work in a rust-free state. Okay, now that we have the hub bearing out, we've got to do some prep work before we can install the new one. We need to make sure that all of this corrosion is cleaned out, and we need a flat, smooth surface here. We want to make the installation as easy as possible, and we need everything to sit flush. So if you have an angle grinder with a scuff pad that's suitable for aluminum, you can use that. If not, you can just use some sandpaper. You also want to make sure you don't neglect the backing plate. This needs to be a flat, clean, smooth surface as well. All right, once we have all of that corrosion knocked down, we just want to do a test fit to make sure this fits in there smoothly and sits flush. You should never have to use any sort of lubricant on either of these surfaces because you don't want it to leach in and ruin those seals, and you definitely never want to suck it into the knuckle using the mounting bolts. So that looks like we're going to be perfect. All right, so now we've got our backing plate cleaned up, and it takes a little bit of coordination here or an extra set of hands. We want to get our backing plate in, and then hold that in place while we slide our hub bearing in and get it secured with at least 1 bolt. A little something like that. We're going to put all the bolts in and then make sure that you torque them down to specification. Then we can start the reassembly process. Now, if you have to reuse the original rotors that you took off, here's a step that often gets missed. You want to make sure that the inside surface and the inside of the hat of the rotor is actually clean. Sometimes there's corrosion and rust buildup that happens, so you want to use the appropriate tools to get rid of it. In this scenario, we just have a whole bunch of grease it looks like somebody put on when they did the last brake job. So we're just going to clean that up, make sure it's a nice clean surface before we reinstall. Now, from this point on, it's relatively straightforward. We're going to put our rotor back on, and then, of course, we'll be reinstalling our caliper and bracket. Now, it is important to note here that because this is a 2-wheel drive truck, we didn't have to deal with the axle nut. If you did have that, you want to make sure that you're torquing that down to proper specification. And when you install your lug nuts, you want to use the proper torque specification for that as well, because over-torquing these can cause excessive lateral run out on the rotor or on the flange face of the hub bearing. All right, so we're wrapping up here. We've got our lug nuts torqued down to spec, and then the final step before we pull out for a test drive is, of course, to pump your brake pedal, because remember, we had to alleviate some of that pressure on the caliper to get the caliper off. I hope you got some useful tips out of this video. Thanks for watching, and remember, when you're looking for replacement parts for your vehicle, don't compromise safety. Install confidence with SKF bearings and seals. For more product information, check them out online at skfpartsinfo.com, or of course you can talk with them on Twitter at skfpartsinfo.